So now that we've made a few guides to work with, I'm going to go ahead and draw in this curved, it's a very subtle curve, but the curve of the driveway on this side. So the first point that I need to look at is this driveway corner, which is at 7 feet X and negative 12 foot 6 inches Y. So let's go back and look at what that would look like. I'm going to get my 2D loci tool. I'm going to click at 0, 0, and then I'm going to come up here in the object info palette, and for X, I'm going to tell it 7 feet, and then for Y, I'm going to tell it negative 12 feet 6, and then I'm going to hit an enter, so that's my first point. Now for my next point, I'm just going to go ahead, because I know my next value, and I'll show you this on the drawing real quick. My next value is right here. So it's 10 feet X, negative 11 feet 6 inches Y. So, and I drew a grid for that 10 feet. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead, I want to go ahead and see, I'm having a problem real quick because the midpoint of my guide, it's actually above the center of my document. And so it's creating like a clicking point where I don't want it to be. I guess I could fix that real quick by coming over here to the snapping palette and go to the snap to intersection. And then if I'm zoomed in here real tight, it'll allow me to click at the intersection between, so here it is, this is my guide for 10 feet X, and then here is 0 Y. So that's where I wanted to click to. So that solved that problem real quick. If I had been a little bit smarter about how I set this up, though, I would have made sure that the midpoint for all of my guides was down here at 0. So, but now that I've got that point in there, let's see. Go back and get the 2D loci and then click right there. And then I need to come over here. So it's already at the 10x, but I know I need to go negative 11 feet 6 inches. If I zoom out, we can see where that point is. And then I just keep going along. So now I'm at 20 feet. And if I come back here to the drawing, I can see that for 20 feet, it's negative 11 feet 2 inches on the y-axis. So I'll go back to the drawing, place that. So this is at 20 feet, I've already placed it, and I just go up here to y. I could enter it in there. However, there's always multiple ways to do things in Vectorworks. So the other way that you could do that is by going up into the Modify menu and going to Move, and then Move again. And then you can tell it, so this is starting from the origin of where it's been placed. So for the y-axis, we're looking for a negative 11 feet 2 inches. And that's the correct place. But I do want to show you the difference is if I were to come up here to the Modify menu again and Move, and then I entered in that exact same value, it's going to move it down the page 11 feet 2 inches. It's not going to move it to the x-axis negative 11 feet 2 inches. So if I click OK, notice it went down there. Whereas when I'm up here in the object info palette, if I enter in that negative 11 feet 2 inches, it moves it to that exact location in the file. And you can see over here, if you have your rulers showing, you can see that here's 10 feet, and that there we are at negative 11 feet 2 inches right there. So this figure right here, it's the actual placement along the axis, whereas if you're using the Move menu, let's see if I can get back there. If you're using the Move menu, it's moving it in relation to where it currently sits in the file. So there we go. Now I did have my, go back to the drawing real quick, show you what I'm talking about. I did go ahead and I entered in a value at 25 feet X along the baseline, and that one is going to be negative 11 feet 6 inches along the Y-axis. So let's go ahead and add that. And I'm going to do it in a different way just to show you. So I'm going to place my locus where the last one ended up. And then I'm just going to come up here to the object info palette and I'm going to say, oh, I know that that one is 25 feet along the x-axis. And then along the y-axis, remember all of these numeric fields in Vectorworks, they act like calculators. So I could just say, I know that I need to add 4 inches in order for that to be, oops. And because I'm going down the page rather than up the page, I needed to go ahead and subtract 4 inches in order to make that negative 11 feet 6 inches, which is what matches what's been recorded here in my site measurements. So essentially there's a million ways to move points through the file, but you can create your base map just by moving things along the X and Y axis. So this last point that I'm looking at is negative 12 feet 9 inches. Come back here. I placed it along the guideline for 30 feet X, and then just come up here and go negative 12 feet 9 inches. And then what I need to do is get my polyline tool, and you just kind of try to connect the dots as best you can. They're most likely never going to match perfectly, so you just get it kind of close enough, and you can always come back and play around with some of your vertices to get them to look good, but actually the way that I first drew it, that looks pretty reasonable. And so now I can go ahead and just get my line tool and I can connect the dots right there. And that essentially is my driveway. Another way that you can accurately enter in different shapes and objects into your drawing is, and we've looked at this a little bit, where if you click and you start drawing, you can go ahead and tab over and you can say this rectangle needs to be 30 feet by 20 feet. And then you enter in twice and you can see that you have like a 30-foot by 20-foot rectangle. The other way that you could do something like that is by double clicking on the tool that you want to draw with before you start drawing. And then you get this create object dialog box that pops open, and you can go ahead and you can change the class, you can change the layer, you can say I actually want this to be 15 feet by 15 feet. You can say I want that to be centered, that 15 feet by 15 feet is from center. I'm going to position that from the center with my next click. You can rotate it. There are a lot of things that you can do to accurately enter something into your drawing. So now that I've clicked OK, you can see that this is my 15-foot by 15-foot square. And wherever it is that I click, it's going to be entered into the drawing. So I'll just go to the origin point of the drawing and click that. And now I have my perfectly sized rectangle right there. So that works not only for the rectangle tool, it works for the line tool. So I can say I need to have a 20-foot line. I want to position it from, I guess, the right, and then click OK. And if I click right there at the origin of the document, then my line moves in that direction. So that's a really accurate way to enter in different shapes. It's going to work the same with circles. You can play with that feature. But that basically covers everything, all of the different methods that I wanted to talk about. You could go ahead, the rest of this drawing could be entered in using the exact same techniques that we've covered. So we looked at doing a straight line, a wall, and then we also put in the gradual curve of this line over there. So go ahead and take a little bit of time, play around with it. Um, Spend a little bit of time playing with the 2D loci tool and then move that along the X and Y axis or axes. You can use either the move command, which was up here under the modify menu, so modify, move, and move, or you can go ahead under the object info palette. Oops, get the selection tool, or you can go and move things in the object info palette. And you can also go ahead and create accurately sized shapes before you ever place them in the drawing by double clicking the shape and then entering in the information here in create object. And you also have the option to create grids. The last thing that I want to leave you with is, remember, I did not like the way I had placed those grid lines. So I want to show you how you can go ahead and work with those after you've created them if you need to make an adjustment. So what you would do is you would just select all of those lines. You can still select them, you just can't modify them. Once they're selected, you're going to do a right click for the context menu, and then you're just going to come over here to unlock. And then what I can do is use the move tool. Make sure that if the last time I used my move tool, I was creating duplicate copies, and this time I don't want to create any duplicates. So I need to change that from 3 to 0. And then I can just go ahead and click to begin from that midpoint and then move it down to the 0. That's the 0 along the y-axis line. And then I can come back over here to modify guides, make guides, and then it'll go back. So yeah, go ahead, play around with your measurements, just have fun with it. There's no right or wrong answer, just learning the tools and getting used to the options that are available to you.